Most of us keep some of our dollars in accounts at banks, and at those banks we have checking accounts and savings accounts. We transfer our dollars back and forth between our checking accounts and savings accounts. We transfer dollars from checking into savings because savings accounts earn a little interest over time, and we transfer dollars that we want liquid from savings back into checking. Most people today have a misunderstanding of the actual workings of the U.S. monetary system on this same operational level. A big source of the collective fiction results from the seemingly mysterious workings of the Federal Reserve Bank. Let's pull the curtain at the Fed back a little bit. The Federal Reserve Bank operates independently yet is part of or within the federal government, the issuer of dollars. The Fed is set up almost exactly the same as any private bank, but with one small exception. The Fed has complete monopoly power over dollars. The Fed, our central bank, where all the banks do their banking, also has the same accounts as all banks, but instead of a checking account, the Fed calls it the reserve account. And instead of a savings account, the Fed calls it the securities account. Any bank with outstanding loans needs to keep a certain percentage, called a reserve requirement, liquid in the reserve account at the Fed, like a checking account at any bank. In addition, anybody that wants to can deposit their dollars in the securities account of the Fed because it earns a little interest, like a savings account at any bank. Making these deposits in the securities account of the Fed is also known as buying a U.S. Treasury bond. All U.S. Treasury bonds, Treasury notes, T-bills, any U.S. Treasury securities are nothing but interest-bearing time deposits in the securities or savings account at the Federal Reserve Bank. When anyone buys Treasury bonds, they are simply making a deposit in the savings account at the Fed, just like at any bank. It's just like getting a CD at any bank, except getting one at the Fed is called a Treasury bond. However, everybody refers to these bonds as debt, like they were during the gold standard era and before. But Treasury bonds are no longer debt. They used to be when they were backed by gold, like during the gold standard era, but not anymore. Treasury bonds are no longer debt because they're all denominated in dollars, dollars that are not convertible or fixed to gold. The federal government no longer needs to borrow dollars. Nobody is lending the federal government anything. When you, anybody else, Japan or China, buys U.S. Treasury bonds, they are paid for with U.S. dollars. The federal government doesn't need to get dollars from anyone. The federal government, the issuer of dollars, creates dollars by fiat at the stroke of a keyboard. Even though our Treasury bonds are no longer backed by gold, many around the world still want them because they are safe, liquid, and backed by the full faith and credit of the largest economy on earth. So what exactly happens when someone buys a U.S. Treasury bond? The dollars used to buy Treasury securities are sitting in checking accounts at private banks, and because these are excess dollars, were transferred to the checking or reserve account at the Fed. On settlement date, after buying the Treasury bonds, those dollars are transferred from the reserve or checking account at the Fed over to their new savings account, their securities account at the Fed. That's it. That's buying a Treasury bill, note, or bond. So buying a Treasury bond is nothing but a transfer of dollars from the Fed's checking account to the Fed's savings account, just like you do at your own bank, and for the same reason, to park dollars in a safe, risk-free, interest-bearing time deposit of dollars. Conversely, what exactly happens when someone sells their Treasury bond or their Treasury bond matures? The dollars are simply transferred from their savings or securities account at the Fed to the checking or reserve account at the Fed. And the same thing happens when the Fed buys U.S. Treasury bonds for QE or LSAP. They are not printing money. They are just transferring the dollars of the sellers of those Treasury bonds from securities to reserve, from one account to another. That's it. And again, the same exact thing happens, and there's nothing to worry about if Japan or if China decided to sell all their Treasury bonds, dump them all at once. The Fed simply transfers those dollars from the securities account to the reserve account. Click, enter, blink. Done. No burden on our children, no unsustainable debt, no out-of-control borrowing, and no danger to the financial security of the country. In our post-gold standard modern monetary system, our dollars are always inside our economic ecology, and the buying and selling of U.S. Treasury bonds is just transferring dollars back and forth between checking and savings accounts in our own U.S. dollar dominion. It's important to understand that the Fed, and by extension all banks, never print money. As chairman of the Fed during the credit crisis, Ben Bernanke said repeatedly that he was only swapping dollars, not printing money. The Fed only transfers dollars when it buys and sells bonds or other assets, but never prints money. Only the federal government, when it deficit spends, or the rest of us, the non-federal government, when we deficit spend, print money. And that is the only way that the money supply increases, the only way the economy grows. The banks and the Fed, by swapping dollars for assets, for collateral, through a process of credit extension, only facilitates the rest of us to print money. Yet you only ever hear the part about the Fed printing money. During QE, when the Fed buys a treasury bond, the Fed quote-unquote prints money to pay the seller of the bonds, the part everybody talks about, but at the very same time the Fed is unprinting the bonds, the same amounts, from the sellers. That's the part nobody talks about. During QE, in addition to buying treasury bonds, the Fed also buys mortgage bonds. The Fed does both of these to manipulate or move interest rates lower to accommodate the economy. Again, the Fed is not printing money. When the Fed buys mortgage bonds, they're swapping those assets for dollars. The more mortgage bonds the Fed buys and holds on its balance sheet, the lower mortgage interest rates get. The sellers of those bonds would rather have those bonds back instead of all those dollars in this low interest rate environment, but they have no choice. Another example of the complete monopoly control of dollars that the federal government, the issuer of dollars, and its agent, the Federal Reserve Bank, holds. In conclusion, the collective misunderstanding of our present-day economic ecology mostly arises from a failure to distinguish the completely separate functions of the federal government, the issuer of dollars, and the non-federal government, the users of dollars. Since the gold standard era ended, the federal government, now the issuer of dollars, operates under a new paradigm, different from when it was a user of gold in a bygone gold standard era. However, certain idiosyncratic relics from then still clumsily coexist with today's post-gold standard reality. As a result, the important needs of the non-federal government, the users of dollars, to balance their individual budgets is confused and commingled with the more important needs of the federal government, the issuer of dollars, to balance the entire economy. Don't take my word for it. Learn about modern monetary theory on your own. Once you grasp the concepts of MMT, you'll be able to step back from the picture and tune out the noise. Tune it out because it's not only distracting and annoying, it's wrong. Only then can you truly appreciate the masterpiece that is our economic ecology in our modern monetary system. Thanks for listening.